The Nameless Echo. From chaos, shadows awaken.
The dusk siren wails across Mordian Tertius, and in Barracks Block 7 Theta, 43 souls begin their nightly preparation to survive until dawn. The metallic shriek cuts through humid air like a blade drawn across steel, signaling not rest, but the commencement of ritualized vigilance. On Deathworlds, sleep is not respite. It is contact with the enemy. Harness frames hang from ceiling rails, each resembling a Medica restraint crossed with an execution device. Steel brackets grip the shoulders while copper contacts rest against temples, spring-loaded clamps positioned precisely above each eyelid. When the subtle flutter of REM sleep begins, the clamps will bite, hard enough to wake, careful not to blind. A mother adjusts her child's straps with mechanical precision, fingers moving through motions worn smooth by repetition. The chemical applications follow established protocol. Nostril wax, thick and acrid, seals passages against pheromone trails that might betray human presence. Throat oils deaden skin exhalations, muting the soft fog of breath that carries scent beyond the walls. Children hold dripstones against their mouths, perforated ceramic vessels that siphon exhalations downward through grates and charcoal filters, denying the air its human signature. The wall shudders. Something large tests the outer plating with patient, methodical pressure. An elder approaches a child's cot, his own harness secured, copper contacts gleaming against weathered skin. "Tonight we practice unseeing," he whispers, settling beside the small form. "Repeat, I do not dream the flying dream." The child's voice carries the flat cadence of learned survival. "I do not dream the speaking dream." Each phrase is a small denial, a refusal to acknowledge what waits beyond consciousness. The distant drums begin. 88 beats per minute, precisely double the human heart at rest. The rhythm pounds through steel plating, through flesh and bone, settling into chest cavities like a second pulse. Locals call it the second heartbeat, though few remember why the cadence must be exact. A clerk in grey tabard passes between cots, chalking names beside brass dials. His data slate bears Ministorum seals and the notation, Directive Sopor 9B. The mark governs their nightly rations, 7 minutes of micro-sleep per 4-hour cycle, staggered across family units to maintain constant watch. Natural sleep is prescribed. Only supervised fragments are permitted. In the corner stands the shock font, a baroque assemblage of electrum and ceramite, bearing purity seals and brown stains that might once have been blood. Families kiss its surface before sleep, whispering prayers to the machine spirit within. The device hums with stored potential, waiting for its sacred purpose. Every 12 minutes, the harnesses tick. The sound marks measurement intervals whose significance remains classified, a metronome for refusal that counts down to dawn. Between ticks, small liturgies, maul, bloom and die. The canticle of unseeing, the prayer of the low tide, exhaled on flattened chests. The drums continue their relentless double time. The walls listen. Something beyond the plating listens too, counting heartbeats through steel, testing patience against human endurance. Eyelids flutter. Muscles unstring despite copper contacts and leather restraints. The room draws itself thin as wire, heavy with listening, a substance denser than air, shaped by fear and desperate practice. A harness registers REM onset. Clamps descend with mechanical precision, biting flesh just hard enough to drag consciousness back from the edge of dreams. The room exhales collectively. Another measurement passed. Another small victory against the night, while something patient waits beyond the walls and the second heartbeat pounds its ancient rhythm into bone and steel. The Administratum classifies Deathworlds through measured indices of lethality, each planet receiving numerical ratings for atmospheric toxicity, predator density, seismic volatility, and 17 other factors that determine humanity's prospects for survival. Yet one classification receives particular attention in resource allocation. Nocturnal threat assessment. the measurement of what emerges when human consciousness dims towards sleep. Worlds where evening itself becomes predatory earn the designation Moat ORB, stamped in red across planetary files and triggering specialized survival protocols. Catachan exemplifies the pattern. Nocturnal fungi bloom at sundown, releasing spore clouds keyed to the microrhythms of mammalian dreaming. When human brains enter REM cycles, the electromagnetic signatures trigger massive spore releases that induce fatal neurospasms in sleeping populations. The jungle learns to hunt by the rhythm of dreams. Vostroya's crystal formations amplify psychic emanations during REM sleep, transforming natural dream cycles into broadcast signals detectable across vast distances. The crystals themselves pose no direct threat, simple mineral deposits formed by geological pressure. The danger lies in what receives these amplified signals, entities that navigate by consciousness, like mariners chart by stars. Mordian Tertius presents our immediate focus. Shadow parasites indigenous to the jungle canopy feed on neural activity during unconsciousness, drawn to the specific bioelectric signatures generated when human awareness loosens its grip. They phase partially into the Imperium during feeding, requiring constant vigilance to maintain the psychic tension necessary for repulsion. Physical barriers alone prove inadequate. Imperial categories translate directly into survival quotas through bureaucratic mechanisms that treat sleep as a measurable resource. Hazard Class Delta permits 8 hours of supervised rest per cycle. Gamma reduces this to 7 minutes of microsleep per 4-hour period. Beta allows 5 minutes. Alpha Prime authorizes stasis only, a privilege reserved for ranking personnel. The calculus is brutal but consistent. Fewer minutes spent dreaming means fewer opportunities for the night to establish contact. A parish clerk recites the relevant statute without lifting his eyes from the data slate. Directive SOPOR 9b. Unsupervised RM cycles are proscribed on hazard classes Gamma and above. Compliance monitored through sensor audit and sacramental confession. The language transforms biological necessity into administrative violation, sleep into a form of theft from the Emperor's protection. The Arbites maintain comprehensive ledgers documenting violations of unseemly somnolence. Each entry records name, duration, REM depth, and associated casualties. Repeat offenders face escalating penalties, reduced oil allocations, extended watch duties, assignment to perimeter details, where survival depends on artificial wakefulness under direct threat. REM ration books bear both munitorum stamps and ministorum seals, transforming sleep allocation into a sacrament requiring administrative and spiritual approval. Families guard these documents like sacred texts, understanding that sleep debt compounds exponentially while forgiveness remains scarce. Certain individuals receive vigil exemptions, authorization for the second heartbeat details whose drumming protects community sleep cycles. The bureaucratic contradiction emerges in official cartography. Imperial maps of Deathworld settlements designate no sleeping quarters, no rest areas, no dormitories, only staging grounds, preparation zones, and evacuation routes. According to Imperial documentation, sleep does not occur on Deathworlds, only vigilance interrupted by brief, measured unconsciousness. Our analytical framework follows 4 recurring lenses. Daily function, where bodies arrange themselves against darkness. Control mechanisms, where law becomes metabolism. Survival taxes paid in oil and watch hours. And spiritual cost, where doctrine shapes fear into sustainable forms. The drums continue their 88-beat cadence while clerks stamp ration books and families prepare for another night of measured refusal. Inside Hab Unit 7 Theta 9, night transforms domestic space into a precision operation where survival depends on role assignment and measured vigilance. Mothers move between harness frames with factory efficiency, adjusting copper contacts and leather restraints that must bite without permanent damage. Children arrange themselves in chalked floor circles, youngest at center, while elders take perimeter positions with iron poles that serve as both weapons and walking aids during daylight hours. The survival inventory spreads across every surface with ritualistic precision. Nostril wax sits in ceramic pots, its acrid scent masking human pheromones that might penetrate ventilation systems. Throat oils gleam in glass vials, thick as blood and rationed accordingly. Dripstones hang from ceiling chains, their perforated surfaces capturing and filtering exhalations downward through grated flooring. The decking itself functions as emergency equipment. Mercy drop latches every 3 meters provide instant evacuation routes when something below requires immediate removal of human scent. Sleep occurs in 7-minute microcycles, staggered across family units to maintain constant watch. The Kowalski family enters their brief unconsciousness, while the Hendersons remain alert, roles reversing every 28 minutes. Above the main entrance, a hand-painted sign declares in fading Gothic script, "Your dream is our death." The words serve as both warning and operational doctrine. The secondary economy emerges from desperation's arithmetic. Callan, a stevedore with trembling hands, approaches neighbors with practiced propositions. "I'll take your watch share tonight if you cover my wife's micro-sleep." Guard duty becomes currency, traded in 15-minute increments that compound into debt cycles spanning months. His wife's tremors lessen on profitable nights. On lean days, she stares at walls and forgets names. Payment flows in bread portions, oil rations, or lines in ration books that will extract future costs. The 88-beat drum cadence continues beyond the walls, its rhythm penetrating steel plating and settling into bone marrow without explanation. Families synchronize their breathing to the external pulse, finding comfort in its mechanical constancy while remaining ignorant of its protective function. The shock font dominates the Hab's central space, incongruously padded with velvet cushions and silk draperies that represent the room's only luxury. Incense burns in brass holders around its base, sending sanctified smoke toward ventilation grates. Brown stains mark its electrum surface, substances that might once have been blood, now dried into sacred patina. Families approach with reverence, touching its surface before attempting sleep and whispering prayers to the machine spirit within. Physiological costs accumulate like compound interest. Hands develop persistent tremors from micro-sleep deprivation. Hallucinations bloom at vision's edges, shadows moving independently, whispers harmonizing with distant drums. Faces age rapidly under artificial lighting, skin growing translucent as bodies consume themselves to maintain wakefulness. Children enter adolescence with veterans' hollow eyes, their growth stunted by sleep debt that compounds faster than rest can repay. The enforcement apparatus operates through embedded sensors and invisible data collection, tracking eye movement and respiratory patterns during supposed rest periods. Sensor logs generate reports determining ration allocations and penalty assessments. Yet questions persist in the measured silence between drumbeats. Who audits a child's REM cycles, and how is compliance measured when dreams officially do not exist? What sacred purpose does the shock font serve, and why does its padding merit such reverence in a world that has forgotten comfort? Curfew becomes creed through chronogongs that carve the night into sanctioned fragments, their bronze voices announcing micro-sleep windows with ecclesiastical authority. 7 minutes of permitted unconsciousness, followed by 21 minutes of mandatory vigilance. The rhythm transforms temporal regulation into doctrine, admitting no deviation or mercy through mechanical precision that governs flesh like battlefield orders. Enforcers patrol HAB blocks, carrying eyelid tremor meters alongside standard shock mauls. The devices measure microspasms indicating REM onset, registering violations before conscious awareness can intervene. Arbeit Sergeant Volk demonstrates with professional dispassion. 0.7 millimeters of flutter constitutes preliminary infraction. 1.2 millimeters triggers immediate penalty assessment. The meters click like insects, sampling air for unauthorized dreams while copper contacts read muscle tension through harness frames. The sleep audit convenes at dawn in the Hab's central chamber. Confessor Hecht collects dream reports while Medicae adept Soren compares sensor logs against ration book entries stamped with Ministorum seals. Citizens queue in formation, heads bowed, reciting night's unconscious activities. "I dreamed of walking through corridors," whispers Citizen Kowalski. The corridors led nowhere. His sensor reading indicates 0.9 millimeters, within tolerance but requiring notation in Gothic script. The ledger governs consequences through accumulated violations. A clerk recites without emphasis, 14 REM onset penalties, 3 days, 3 violent dreamings, report to ecclesiarchy. Violent dreaming constitutes a category. Thrashing bodies, spoken words not learned through catechism. Names transfer to separate columns, determining oil allocations and patrol assignments. Violators receive immediate assignment to penance duty with the sleepless guard. Night patrols beyond the walls equipped with sanctioned stimulants that taste like industrial solvent and sit in the gut like wire. Guardsman Thorne returns from patrol with pupils dilated to pinpricks, hands shaking as he describes shadows moving independently of their sources. The chemical cocktail burns throats raw while flooding nervous systems with artificial wakefulness, demanding escalating doses to maintain effectiveness. Commissars impose field-standard wakefulness through resource allocation, treating sleep as ammunition expenditure. Blown rations mean docked powder hours, stimulant allocations reduced proportionally to infractions. Citizen Hendricks pawned tomorrow's microsleep for extra doses, creating debt cycles spiraling beyond mathematical resolution. His wife counts tremors instead of heartbeats, measuring time in withdrawal symptoms. Chemical dependency begins as mercy and ends as chain. First doses are recaf concentrate, bitter, black, legal. Then depot ampules stamped with cog and skull, cracked against tongues when bells falter. Tolerance builds, doses rise. Official supplies thin at month's end while bodies, taught to fear RM slopes, beg for more. The Arbites maintain gallows humour regarding enforcement duties, scrawling on precinct walls. Sleep is theft from the Emperor's daylight. REM ration books, bearing dual munitorum and ministorum authority, transform biological necessity into sacramental privilege, requiring bureaucratic and spiritual approval. The state promises safety through obedience to cadence. Submit to measured microsleep. Accept chemical supplementation. Report dream content for review. Yet questions accumulate like debt between drumbeats. Who supplies stimulants when official sources run dry? What happens during penance duty beyond walls, where shadows move independently? The shadow economy operates through necessity's cruel mathematics, transforming desperation into currency, while bodies pay compound interest on borrowed wakefulness. Stim ampules circulate through back-alley networks, their official contents diluted with sawdust and industrial solvents that burn throats raw while providing diminishing returns on artificial alertness. Sellers swear by stolen cog and skull stamps, but the glass rings thin when tapped, revealing adulterants that promise wakefulness at the cost of organ function. Contraband Somnac pods promise 11 minutes of deep sleep, nearly double the legal allocation, through black market technology salvaged from medical facilities. The cylindrical devices hum with stolen power cells, their interior padding stained with previous users' desperation. Users weep on waking, grateful and ashamed. A single session costs 3 days' bread rations, yet demand exceeds supply as families mortgage futures for brief unconsciousness that feels like resurrection. Sleep brokers operate from hab corners, selling watch coverage in 15-minute increments, while calculating compound interest on borrowed vigilance. Minor Korvek demonstrates the arithmetic. He pawned 2 ration hours last week to cover his daughter's fever sleep, now owes 6 shifts of perimeter watch to balance the ledger. Sleep debt compounds exponentially. Each borrowed hour demands triple repayment through extended wakefulness that erodes cognitive function and physical coordination. His daughter takes her first perimeter poll at 8 to keep the entries from turning red. Oils and wax resurface as scarcity goods rationed by the Munitorum, their prices exceeding bread by factors of 3. Throat oils derived from Mordian's subterranean filter worms sell for 2 days' caloric intake on black markets. Nostril wax harvested from hive wasps infesting upper spires trades for favors that defy imperial law. Families dilute supplies with cooking fat and candle drippings, creating inferior substitutes that provide marginal protection against nocturnal predation. Medicae Adept Sorin falsifies sensor logs for meat rations, adjusting REM readings to indicate compliance while actual measurements exceed permitted thresholds. His whispered promise, the machine spirit hears what we feed it. 1 kilogram of processed protein buys 3 falsified readings, 2 kilograms purchases complete cycle erasure. The corruption flows both directions, desperate families offering weeks' wages for single nights of unmonitored rest. Brutal workarounds emerge from systematic deprivation. Workers glue eyelids with industrial tack to prevent involuntary closure. Trading vision for compliance when tearing them free takes skin. Children receive camphor rubs that burn flesh raw while preventing REM sliding through chemical irritation. Families practice standing sleep, unconsciousness maintained in vertical positions that trigger automatic awakening when muscle tension fails. Second heartbeat, details receive extra oil allotments, their precious supplies paid through day shift labor assignments in processing facilities. Drummers work double shifts, 8 hours maintaining industrial machinery, followed by night-long percussion duties. Someone pays for that largesse. The day ledger shows beat levy stamps requiring 2 additional refinery hours per household weekly to underwrite drumline consumables. The human toll accumulates through cascade failures, where compromised judgment leads to industrial accidents claiming fingers, limbs, lives. Family tensions explode over sleep debt arguments. Who owes whom vigilance? Whose turn for micro-rest? Which child receives priority when oils run short? Marriages dissolve under shared exhaustion that transforms love into resource competition. Black market chemicals produce unpredictable reactions as tolerance builds. Cut stimulants accelerate heartbeats until the second heartbeat cannot be heard. Others induce REM rebound that drags users into dream depth, just as clamps relax. One night, tainted ampules send 12 workers into synchronized trembling. The harness ticks a line. The room begins breathing in unison. Witnesses report pressure in the ears like distant sea. The dusk service convenes not for comfort, but for calibration. Families gathering in the Hab's central chamber as chrono gongs announce the transition from supervised daylight to rationed vigilance. Confessor Hecht raises his Crozius Arcanum, while acolytes arrange incense burners with metronomic precision. 3 grams per cubic meter of enclosed space, time to dissipate before scent patterns establish recognizable signatures that might penetrate ventilation systems and attract nocturnal attention. The canticle of unseeing begins with practiced monotone, voices deliberately flattened by exhaustion and institutional training. Dreams are false gifts of the ruinous powers, the congregation recites, each word worn smooth by repetition. We refuse their offerings. We choose the emperor's wakefulness. Children stand on benches to reach prayer boards while elders maintain iron poles. Across their knees, transforming theological doctrine into survival protocol through shared ritual observance. Confessions follow established procedure, parishioners reporting unconscious activities with clinical precision. A child raises her trembling hand, voice carrying the flat cadence of learned submission. I dreamed of flying over the camp. I saw roofs like tin coins. Confessor Hecht marks his data slate with Gothic notation, elevated hazard, prescribing 3 additional nights of extended watch plus supplementary stimulant allocation. The child's mother whispers apologies while adjusting harness straps that will bite deeper tonight. The prayer of the low tide teaches respiratory doctrine through synchronized breath control. Parishioners practice the technique. Inhale for 2 counts through clenched teeth. Exhale for 5 across compressed lips. Chest flattened until ribs ache. The method reduces pheromone signatures by 37%, according to Mechanicus testing, starving exhalations of scent markers while transforming theology into biochemical countermeasure. Bells ring deliberately off cadence, their bronze voices disrupting musical progression that might create attractant sequences. Incense burns in exact measures, its acrid smoke interfering with known predator sensory pathways while creating auditory and olfactory static. The ecclesiarchy learned through casualty reports that rhythmic consistency draws attention. Chaos provides protection through calculated unpredictability. Ordo Hereticus, Edict 7 Veil, hangs framed beside the shrine, parchment bearing crimson seals and Gothic script. Be advised, the Imperium tests the eyelid. Vigilance is prayer, sleep is apostasy. The document transforms unconsciousness into heresy through bureaucratic authority, making natural rest equivalent to treason against the throne. The shock font dominates sacred space, its electrum surface bearing an aquila worked in precious metals and brown stains that families kiss with reverence. The device hums with stored electrical potential, copper contacts gleaming like eyes in incense smoke. Parishioners approach by age order, pressing lips to stained metal while whispering personal prayers for protection through coming darkness. Widow Korvek provides testimony regarding the long dream, her voice hollow with processed trauma. The drums faltered. Something whispered prayer completions in my ear, words I had not yet spoken. Her account enters official records as evidence supporting current protocols, demonstrating how individual suffering justifies collective deprivation through institutional logic. These rites serve dual functions, calming populations rationed into desperation through shared ritual while reinforcing social control through collective vigilance, where each citizen monitors others for unauthorized rest or dream contamination. What happens when drum rhythms break during night watch? What sacred origin grants the shock font its holy status? The eclipse arrives 17 minutes ahead of Mechanicus calculations, disrupting chronometer synchronization maintained by acolytes whose timing governs survival protocols through measured precision. Official time becomes unreliable as shadows fall across solar collectors and emergency klaxons stutter through failing power cycles. Warning sirens designed to announce dusk procedures emit broken wails before dying entirely, leaving Outpost 19 dependent on human judgment in circumstances where human judgment kills. Blast shutters seal with hydraulic finality, heavy adamantine plates groaning under atmospheric pressure, changes that herald nocturnal predation. The sound reverberates through hab blocks like coffin mechanisms engaging, while families check harness clamps with trembling efficiency. Oils are applied in desperate haste, throat suppressants smeared across skin, while nostril wax is packed beyond recommended density, threatening suffocation in exchange for scent masking. The second heartbeat detail takes positions on wall gantries, 12 drummers gripping mallets over bronze surfaces that gleam in failing light. Sergeant Volk raises his baton while checking chronometer readings one final time. The rhythm must be mathematically precise, 88 beats per minute, exactly double the average human pulse at rest. Mathematical perfection becomes liturgy as mallets descend in unison, sending the sacred cadence through steel plating and human bone. Spores rise from exterior carrion pits, like luminescent particulate matter, their phosphorescent clouds responding to electromagnetic signatures that penetrate walls despite shielding protocols. Dripstones begin sweating condensation as atmospheric pressure shifts, their perforated surfaces weeping moisture that carries human scent toward ventilation systems. The air itself becomes hostile territory, requiring active countermeasures. Inside the crowded barracks, families cluster around harness frames, while copper contacts gleam against temple flesh. Children form defensive circles on chalked flooring, while elders maintain perimeter positions with regulation iron poles. The shock font hums with stored electrical potential, its electrum surface bearing purity seals and brown stains that families kiss with reverence before attempting sleep. Outside, the sleepless guard patrol in slick coats designed to shed spore adhesion, their movements visible through observation slits as dark shapes moving against darker backgrounds. Guardsman Thorn reports through Voxcaster. Perimeter secure. Movement detected sectors 7 through 12. His voice carries the chemical flatness of stimulant overdose, managed through official channels. Laborer Korvek's sensor malfunctions at the critical moment. His eyelids flutter beyond permitted thresholds, while the harness clamp fails to engage, copper contacts sparking against sweat-slicked skin. His breathing deepens into REM rhythm as consciousness slides towards sleep, despite institutional training and environmental terror. Umbra moths respond immediately to detected neural activity, swarming the drum tower in behavioral patterns triggered by specific brainwave signatures. Their wings create interference that disrupts the sacred 88-beat rhythm, while proboscis appendages probe steel plating for entry points. The drumline staggers under moth weight as insects cluster across bronze surfaces, their combined mass threatening structural integrity. Inside, cold static prickles the air like pre-storm electrical buildup. Candles burn from both ends according to protocol, while families intone the canticle of unseeing with practiced precision. But sleeping Korvek murmurs responses in cadence that deviates from established patterns, as if another respiratory system shapes his exhalations. The words remain doctrinally correct, but the rhythm carries harmonics that don't originate from human vocal apparatus. They drag him to the shock font while his lips continue moving in alien cadence. The electrical discharge slams his body backward, spine arching as voltage courses through his nervous system, according to designed parameters. The psychic echo slams the room simultaneously. Measurable pressure that makes eardrums register displacement while something vast and patient tests the boundaries between sleeping minds and waking reality. A drummer's hand breaks under accumulated moth weight, bones fracturing audibly as the protective rhythm falters. A child cries and everyone hears it simultaneously, not through atmospheric transmission, but through direct neural contact that bypasses physical sound propagation. The violation sends mothers scrambling for harness adjustments while fathers grip iron poles with measured tension. The drumline nearly collapses as moth accumulation exceeds structural tolerances. Equipment failures cascade through interconnected systems, while the sacred rhythm becomes irregular, losing mathematical precision that maintains protective functions. Cold pressure builds in enclosed spaces as environmental countermeasures fail sequentially. Dawn takes hours to arrive through damaged atmospheric conditions, sunlight filtering through compromised shutters to reveal crushed moth paste coating walls like luminescent paint. 3 citizens are missing, empty harnesses swaying from ceiling chains, while their ration books remain stamped and current. 1 survivor remains conscious but unresponsive, staring at walls while responding to questions with words spoken in incorrect cadences that suggest neural contamination. The wall exterior reeks of crushed moth paste, organic matter smeared across defensive positions like evidence of desperate resistance. Casualty assessment begins immediately through established protocols, while Confessor Hecht prepares audit materials for administrative review. Casualty lists are read with bureaucratic precision. Stevedore Hendricks, missing. Drummer Korvek from Gantry 2, missing. Child designation 7 Theta 9C missing. Compliance reports must be filed documenting sensor malfunctions and protocol violations. The night's events demand accounting through administrative procedures that transform terror into data points suitable for Imperial record-keeping and resource allocation adjustments. What are Umbra moths, and why does the 88-beat rhythm affect their behavioral patterns? What entity achieved partial manifestation when the sleeper's prayer responses fell out of synchronization with established protective cadences? The predators of Mordian Tertius operate through biological mechanisms that transform human vulnerability into feeding opportunity. Each species evolved to exploit specific aspects of sleep physiology with surgical precision. Understanding these nocturnal hunters reveals the brutal logic underlying every defensive protocol, where ritual becomes survival and superstition masks scientific necessity. Umbra moths exemplify the pattern through specialized sensory apparatus designed for dream detection. Their compound eyes register bioelectric fluctuations generated by rapid eye movement, tracking sleeping humans through steel plating with precision exceeding Imperial sensor technology. The moth proboscis carries soporific enzymes that deepen sleep states when injected through skin contact, creating feedback loops where initial predation enables extended feeding cycles. Victims experience euphoric unconsciousness, while neural tissue is systematically drained through hollow feeding tubes. Hush wasps track cortisol signatures through atmospheric sampling, their antennae detecting stress hormones at concentrations measured in parts per billion. They follow biochemical trails to exhausted populations, then inject paralytic venom that maintains consciousness during consumption. The wasps hunt fatigue itself. Populations pushed beyond physiological limits become beacons broadcasting their desperation through chemical signatures. Shamblevine responds to exhaled carbon dioxide patterns, its root networks detecting respiratory rhythms through soil transmission across vast distances. The carnivorous plant produces hallucinogenic spores timed to human sleep cycles, inducing pleasant visions that mask root tendril penetration. Victims dream of comfort while being slowly digested, their bodies providing nutrients for vine expansion spanning continents. These predation mechanisms explain defensive tool functionality through precise biological countermeasures. Nostril wax masks, pheromones triggering hunting responses, while throat oils flatten scent profiles below detection thresholds. Dripstones divert exhalations away from atmospheric circulation, preventing carbon dioxide accumulation that would beacon sleeping locations to vine networks. Every seemingly ritualistic act serves as vital countermeasure against specific biological threats. Magos biologist Vecht demonstrates the 88-beat logic through comparative predator analysis in his Forge laboratory. The rhythm, precisely double human heartbeat at rest, generates acoustic signatures that confuse chironomid predators into mapping noise sources to herd ungulates rather than human settlements. He taps bronze drum surfaces while Auspex readings graph the scatter. Moth swarm density drops around gantries while concentration thickens on tower faces. The second heartbeat represents sacrificial labor that draws hunting pressure away from sleeping populations through mathematical precision, translated into protective sound. The shock font's technical analysis reveals its origin. An electrum-cased defibrillator salvaged from void ship medical facilities, its capacitors replaced through Mechanicus charity. The device jolts brains from REM states with calibrated electrical violence, successfully terminating sleep state vulnerability. Local theology sanctifies the mechanism because survivors return speaking in correct cadences, leading citizens to believe electrical discharge snaps souls back into bodies. Yet biological and chemical explanations leave crucial questions unanswered. Umbra moths operate through physical mechanisms: compound eyes, enzymatic injection, tissue drainage. Spores function through atmospheric distribution and neurological disruption. The cold pressure experienced during prayer disruption cannot be explained through known predation models. The Ecclesiarchy's classification of deep sleep as an open door to damnation suggests threats transcending biological predation. Directive SOPOR 9b conceals deeper truths behind administrative language, transforming sleep restriction into metaphysical necessity through bureaucratic authority that treats dreams as navigational beacons for entities operating beyond material reality. What emerges when synchronized prayer cadences create dimensional vulnerabilities? What does Inquisition classification reveal about the true nature of sleep on death worlds? The Ordo Hereticus file arrives sealed with crimson wax and bearing classification marks that restrict access to Inquisition personnel. Its contents transform institutional cruelty into desperate necessity through data that correlates REM sleep phases with minor warp incursions across 17 death worlds. The measurements are precise. When human populations enter synchronized dream states, psychic resonance equipment registers dimensional membrane fluctuations that allow Imperium entities to establish contact with material reality. Recurrent dream patterns function as psychic handholds for entities that notice rhythm with predatory precision. Shared visions create dimensional anchors, stable reference points enabling warp dwellers to navigate across the barrier separating realities. The more synchronized the dreaming population, the stronger these anchors become, transforming natural sleep into involuntary invitation for forces that use human consciousness as gateway into physical space. The Korvek incident demonstrates this mechanism's lethal potential. When HAB Unit 12 Gamma lost its drumline to structural collapse, confessor and congregation compensated through perfect liturgical synchronization. 47 voices recited evening prayers in mathematical unison, their shared cadence creating resonance patterns that something beyond material reality recognized as navigational beacon. Citizens reported completion of prayers they had not yet spoken, words emerging from their mouths in voices not their own, while conscious inhabitants listened in growing horror. After that incident, Directive SOPOR 9b prescribed unsupervised REM cycles through administrative authority backed by Inquisition mandate. The regulation conceals metaphysical necessity behind bureaucratic terminology. Unsupervised REM cycles are prescribed on hazard classes Gamma and above. Official language protects populations through engineered exhaustion while maintaining operational security regarding the true nature of the threat. The insomnia doctrine functions as a distributed Geller field assembled from human suffering rather than technological barriers. Sleep deprivation creates psychic static, mental discomfort generating interference that disrupts entity navigation through dimensional space. Noise chaos prevents pattern recognition, while physical discomfort's abrasive texture makes human consciousness unsuitable for use as anchor points by warp predators seeking stable reference coordinates. The second heartbeat represents a sacrament of confusion, its 88-beat rhythm designed to shatter regularities that would become dimensional ladders. Mathematical precision serves dual purposes, confusing biological predators while creating acoustic chaos that prevents psychic synchronization among sleeping populations. The drummers perform sacrificial labor, their exhaustion and broken bones protecting communities through deliberate disorder that maintains protective cacophony. The shock font gains new significance within this framework. Electrical violence administered at REM onset functions as forced desynchronization, spiking through cadence to snap minds out of alignment with whatever waits beyond the veil. The device serves as both medical intervention and metaphysical countermeasure, its sanctification earned through demonstrated effectiveness at severing unwanted connections. This represents the documentary's central reframe. Apparent state brutality serves as desperate protection against threats transcending material reality. Confessor Hecht admits the cruel mathematics during recorded confession. We engineer populations too exhausted to dream because dreaming creates target profiles for warp predation. The doctrine kills slowly, but saves collectively. His words transform institutional torture into metaphysical necessity, revealing logic that treats individual degradation as acceptable cost for dimensional security. Yet every denied hour of rest exacts compound interest in human suffering. Tremors, hallucinations, family dissolution, industrial accidents. The costs accumulate while protection remains invisible to those who pay the price through deteriorating bodies and shattered minds. How do military regiments implement no-REM doctrine during active campaigns where sleep deprivation compounds battlefield stress? What happens to soldiers who can no longer maintain artificial wakefulness when stimulant tolerance exceeds supply capacity? Military adaptation of the insomnia doctrine transforms civilian survival protocols into battlefield tactics where unconsciousness becomes operational failure, requiring systematic countermeasures. Deathworld regiments train under principles treating sleep as enemy contact, their drill sergeants teaching staggered micro-sleep under fire through exercises simulating combat conditions while managing REM cycles through buddy system surveillance and mechanical intervention designed to prevent synchronized dreaming that creates tactical vulnerabilities. Training grounds echo with commands that function as survival doctrine. 7 minutes maximum. Eyes on your battle brother. Strike first. Confess later. The cardinal rule acknowledges battlefield reality, where partner dreaming creates security breaches exploitable by both material predators and immaterial entities seeking dimensional anchor points. Recruits practice buddy system eyelid clamping, learning to detect REM flutter through tactile monitoring while maintaining weapon readiness during rotation cycles. Field manuals itemize microsleep permissions with mathematical precision based on threat assessment matrices. Ambush operations permit 3-minute cycles per trooper, staggered across squad elements to maintain continuous vigilance. Reconnaissance patrols authorize 5-minute windows during defensive positions. Assault phases forbid unconsciousness entirely, requiring stimulant supplementation through quartermaster allocation. Commissar Volk demonstrates enforcement philosophy through memorable directive. Snoring constitutes unauthorized Vox transmission broadcasting position, coordinates to hostile forces. Veterans develop personal countermeasures anchoring consciousness near waking thresholds without crossing into REM vulnerability. Trooper Hendricks chews stimulant seeds, releasing bitter alkaloids that maintain alertness through controlled toxicity, his scarred hands demonstrating permanent tremors earned through decades of artificial wakefulness. Salt placed on tongues creates physical discomfort, preventing deeper sleep states while maintaining operational capacity. These adaptations represent individual solutions to institutional demands that treat human biology as equipment requiring constant maintenance. Transport vessels reveal hierarchical implementation through resource allocation, treating rest as privilege distributed according to rank and operational necessity. Stasis. Bunks aboard troop carriers remain reserved for officer corps, their climate-controlled chambers providing genuine unconsciousness, while enlisted personnel occupy upright positions in cargo holds for weeks, eyes bloodshot and raw from enforced vigilance. Medical orderlies apply stimulant vapor beneath nostrils, while logging each application against ledgers tracking chemical dependency progression across unit rosters. The doctrine produces tactically effective units returning from patrol assignments with casualty rates 30% below standard Imperial averages. Deathworld regiments excel at sustained operations requiring vigilance against nocturnal predation, their artificial alertness translating into battlefield advantages during extended campaigns against enemies exploiting human sleep cycles. Yet tactical success extracts compound costs through psychological degradation, leaving soldiers vibrating with exhaustion, their judgment brittle and decision-making catastrophically compromised under stress conditions. Field execution for sleeping on watch occurs with administrative regularity. At Forward Operating Base Tertius, Guardsman Kale receives summary judgment for Ream violation during perimeter duty, his final words recorded for training documentation. I saw green fields. Commissar Thorne's bolt pistol provides clinical termination while Chaplain Korvek offers benediction focusing on operational rather than spiritual comfort. Vigilance serves the Emperor. Sleep serves the enemy. Maintaining artificial wakefulness at regimental scale demands massive resource allocation across multiple Imperial departments. Stimulant production requires dedicated manufacturers. Transport capacity allocates tonnage for chemical supplies. Medical facilities treat overdose casualties while maintaining operational readiness. What supply chains sustain industrial-scale sleep deprivation across theatre commands? Who receives genuine rest privileges? And what institutional justification supports such hierarchical distribution of biological necessity? The economic infrastructure supporting industrial-scale sleep deprivation spans multiple Imperial departments, their coordinated resource allocation treating exhaustion as strategic necessity, requiring systematic provisioning across 17 death worlds. Departmenta Munitorum coffers allocate stimulant supplies according to planetary hazard classifications, quarterly budgets, itemizing chemical tonnage alongside ammunition requirements. Hazard Class Gamma receives standard alkaloid supplements. Alpha Prime authorizes military-grade compounds that burn throat tissue while maintaining operational effectiveness through controlled toxicity measured in acceptable casualty percentages. Mechanicus Forge Worlds mass-produce eyelid restraint systems through automated production lines, their monthly output measured in millions of copper contact units. Technical specifications demand precise calibration. Insufficient. Pressure allows REM onset, while excessive force causes permanent ocular damage, reducing workforce productivity. Quality control acolytes test spring tension against servo skull measurements, recording acceptable failure rates that balance human preservation against resource expenditure through mathematical optimization. Ecclesiarchy requisitions include specialized incense formulations designed to disrupt pattern recognition in preying populations. Sacred smoke contains chemical compounds preventing synchronized breathing that might create dimensional vulnerabilities through collective ritual. Ministry procurement officers disguise orders as liturgical enhancement materials, while trafficking atmospheric countermeasures against psychic predation through olfactory interference that transforms theology into biochemical warfare. Contraband Somnac pods travel in shipping containers marked machinery lubricant to avoid Arbeits inspection protocols. Black market distributors exploit classification gaps where medical equipment receives cursory examination compared to controlled substances. Cargo manifests list hydraulic maintenance supplies, while crates contain sleep induction technology worth more than Imperial Guard vehicles on markets where unconsciousness commands premium pricing beyond bread or water. Processing facilities demonstrate brutal economics underlying survival resource production. Oils and wax derived from native beast glands harvested through industrial extraction. Workers operating machinery that claims fingers with mechanical regularity, while quotas demand continuous output. The Korvek rendering plant processes filter worm secretions into throat suppressants. Assembly lines staffed by conscripts, whose trembling hands feed organic matter into grinding apparatus that reduces biology to survival commodity. Transport hierarchies reveal resource allocation based on operational value rather than human dignity. Stasis caskets accompany officer corps aboard troop vessels, their climate-controlled chambers providing genuine rest while maintaining command effectiveness. Enlisted personnel endure weeks of upright transport in cargo holds, stimulant vapor administered through atmospheric systems, while medical orderlies log chemical dependency progression across unit rosters. Corruption follows predictable patterns where survival resources become currency in shadow economies. Diverted oil shipments leave Hab Unit 9 Delta unprotected. 5 citizens lost in a single night after quartermaster theft redirects protective substances to black market buyers. Casualty reports file deaths under equipment failure rather than administrative corruption, preserving institutional reputation through semantic manipulation. Earlier planted elements achieve payoff through industrial revelation. Dripstones represent byproducts of Prometheum refinery scrubbing systems, their production creating cascade shortages when fuel processing takes priority over survival. Equipment. When refineries increase output to meet military demands, civilian protection decreases proportionally through resource competition that treats human survival as secondary to energy production. Departamento Munitorum Actuarial Analysis calculates that replacing dead guardsmen costs less than developing effective countermeasures across Death World theaters. Monthly replacement requirements total 40,000 troops with 89% projected casualties within first deployment year, creating sustainable attrition rates that justify continued reliance on exhaustion-based defensive doctrine rather than technological solutions. What happens when desperate populations encounter promises of safe, natural sleep? How does the imperial state respond when such promises spread through communities already pushed beyond physiological limits? The lay preacher emerges from desperation's arithmetic, his whispered promises spreading through Somnac distribution networks like contagion among populations pushed beyond physiological limits. Brother Matthias claims revelation from a saint, whose name changes with each telling, but whose promise remains constant. Lay down and fear not. The Emperor grants rest to the faithful. His words carry weight because they offer what imperial doctrine denies: genuine unconsciousness without harness bite or chemical burn. Midnight services form in abandoned storage chambers where families share threadbare blankets and practice synchronized deep sleep. The ritual appears deceptively simple. Collective prayer followed by natural rest, lasting full hours rather than measured minutes. Initially, the promise proves genuine. Participants wake grateful and weeping with relief, their bodies remembering what sleep should feel like before institutional terror transformed it into rationed vigilance. Children sleep without harness marks. Adults wake without tremors. Productivity spikes while accidents decrease. The Ministorum cannot compete with authentic rest, their litanies of exhaustion rendered hollow beside rested faces. Then patterns tighten with mathematical precision. Prayers standardize across congregations despite geographic separation. Identical words emerging from different mouths in perfect synchronization. Dreams align between participants who have never met. Shared visions creating connections that transcend individual consciousness. A child in Hab Unit 7 Theta recites imagery identical to testimonies recorded in 12 different settlements. The lady walks through silver corridors, counting sleeping children with fingers like moonbeams. Something begins answering prayers with completion spoken in voices not belonging to the speakers, finishing sentences before conscious thought can form words. The Arbite's response arrives with predictable brutality. Heavy boots kick down chamber doors while shock malls destroy somnac pods and confiscate pillows as evidence of heretical activity. Mothers are dragged away for permitting children to sleep through unauthorized hymns, while fathers receive summary judgment for participating in collective unconsciousness. The human cost is immediate. Families shattered, communities scattered, hope transformed into martyrdom that feeds recruitment cycles. The contradiction tightens around populations caught between competing necessities. Sleep deprivation protects against warp incursion, but breeds heresy through desperation that makes cult promises irresistible. Each crackdown feeds despair that increases black market demand while providing recruitment opportunities for sex promising rest as religious sacrament. Enforcement creates converts faster than execution eliminates them. Evidence examination reveals disturbing artifacts. A confiscated icon resembles a soft cloud rendered in unknown materials, bleeding clear fluid when touched. Chemical analysis remains inconclusive, but its presence suggests the cult's promises prove accurate through mechanisms beyond imperial understanding. Participants receive genuine rest because something else assumes the burden of their vigilance. Long-term survivors develop adaptations that blur the line between discipline and damage. Eyes that twitch involuntarily, informal codes for sharing survival strategies, knowing glances that communicate what words cannot safely express. Families teach children to recognize the difference between natural dreams and answered prayers, to wake at the first whisper of completion. What remains when sleep itself becomes a battlefield, where rest requires choosing between imperial law and biological necessity? How do families teach children to survive lifetimes of hostile nights while distinguishing salvation from damnation? The ledger's total human cost through measurements that transform suffering into administrative clarity. Average lifespan reduced by 18 years. Tremor disorders affecting 73% of adults. Hallucinosis, so prevalent, it gets misfiled as minor prophecy by populations seeking meaning in exhaustion's static. Medical reports document cascade failures where sleep debt compounds across generations, creating baseline neurological function that imperial standards classify as severe impairment. Social structures collapse under accumulated strain. Marriages dissolve through vigil debt arithmetic, where partners calculate affection in traded watch hours. Intimacy rationed like oils and measured in stolen minutes. Children enter perimeter rotations at 8 years old, their small hands gripping regulation iron poles while learning catechisms that transform terror into procedural wisdom. Laughter occurs only during daylight, like a foreign language, its sound startling families who have forgotten joy's acoustic signature. Planted mysteries achieve resolution through institutional revelation. Directive SOPOR 9B bears its designation from the Sopor massacre. Hab 12 Gamma, 9th Bell, Breach Incident B, where 47 synchronized voices made a dimensional ladder and something climbed through. The regulation reads bureaucratic, but its grammar is blood. The second heartbeat functions as both predator decoy and metaphysical sacrament, its 88-beat rhythm confusing biological hunters while preventing psychic synchronization that creates warp anchors. Wax and oils represent life maintenance rather than superstition, their scarcity reflecting genuine protective necessity. Dripstones, byproducts of Prometheum scrubbers, reroute breath like trenches divert floodwater. When fuel quotas surge, stones vanish and casualties rise. The shock font achieves sacred status as soul anchor reliquary, its electrical violence proven to snap minds back from dimensional contact when prayer cadences fall out of synchronization. Families kiss its stained surface because the device saves through controlled brutality rather than punishment. The broader thesis crystallizes. On death worlds, institutions domesticate terror by rationing sleep, measuring morality in minutes of REM denied to preserve the collective. The insomnia doctrine reframes itself as distributed Geller field woven from discomfort, noise, and human denial. The arithmetic works, and it ruins the accountants. A mother teaches her child the only permitted lullaby. Don't dream. Drift. He repeats without comprehension, matching breath to the prayer of the low tide, because rhythm survives understanding. The distinction carries life or death significance. Drifting maintains consciousness near waking thresholds, while dreaming creates vulnerability exploitable by entities using human sleep as navigation beacon. The harness ticks with mechanical precision. Eyes flutter despite copper contacts and leather restraints. The bite arrives, dragging consciousness back from the edge while something patient listens beyond steel plating and withdraws, cheated of purchase by 7 minutes and a scarred machine. The child from Chapter 1 recites the low-tide prayer without comprehending words, only rhythm, only the cadence that keeps darkness at bay. Candles extinguish with wetted fingers. The room holds its collective breath, an empire's creed reduced to technique for surviving the night. Procedural wisdom engraved as lullaby provides cognitive closure without comfort.